The friend who understands you, creates you. Romain Rolland, think of a time when you and another person were completely in sync. It could be a friend or a lover or a family member or someone you just met by chance. Go back to that time and try to think what it was about the person that made you feel so attuned to him/her. Chances are that you found you thought alike or felt the same way about a certain movie or book or experience. You might not have noticed it, but maybe you had similar patterns of breathing or speech. Maybe you had a similar background or similar beliefs. Whatever you come up with will be a reflection of the same basic element, rapport. Rapport is the ability to enter someone else's world, to make him feel that you understand him, that you have a strong common bond. It's the ability to go fully from your map of the world to his map of the world. It's the essence of successful communication. Rapport is the ultimate tool for producing results with other people. Remember, we learned in Chapter 5, The 7 Lies of Success, that people are your most important resource. Well, rapport is the way you tap that resource. No matter what you want in your life, if you can develop rapport with the right people, you'll be able to fill their needs, and they will be able to fill yours. The ability to establish rapport is one of the most important skills a person can have. To be a good performer or a good salesman, a good parent or a good friend, a good persuader or a good politician, what you really need is rapport, the ability to form a powerful common human bond and a relationship of responsiveness. A lot of people make life very complicated and difficult. It doesn't have to be. All the skills you learn in this book are really ways to achieve greater rapport with people, and rapport with others makes almost any task simpler, easier, and more enjoyable. No matter what you want to do, see, create, share, or experience in life, whether it's achieving spiritual realization or earning $1 million, there's someone else who can help you accomplish your goal more quickly and easily. Someone else knows how to get there quicker or more effectively, or can do something to help you get where you want to go more rapidly. The way to enlist that person is to achieve rapport, the magic bond that unites people and makes them feel like partners. Want to know the worst cliché ever coined? Opposites attract. Like most things that are false, it has an element of truth. When people have enough in common, the elements of difference add a certain excitement to things. But overall, who is attractive to you? Whom do you want to spend time with? Are you looking for someone who disagrees with you on everything, has different interests, likes to sleep when you want to play, and likes to play when you want to sleep? Of course not. You want to be with people who are like you and yet unique. When people are like each other, they tend to like each other. Do people form clubs of people who are different from them? No. They get together as fellow war veterans or stamp collectors or baseball card collectors, because having something in common creates rapport. Ever go to a convention? Isn't there an instant bond created among people who've never seen each other before? One of the staples of comedy is a fast-talking, backslapping extrovert trying to interact with a quiet, self-effacing introvert. How do they get along? Terribly. They're just not enough alike to really like each other very much. Whom do most Americans tend to feel better about, the English or the Iranians? Easy answer. And whom do we have the most in common with? Same answer. Think about the Middle East. Why do you think there are problems there? Are the Jews and Arabs alike in their religious beliefs? Do they have the same sort of justice system? Do they have the same language? You could go on and on. Their problems result from the ways they're different. In fact, when we say that people are having differences, we mean that the ways in which they're not alike are causing all sorts of problems. What about blacks and whites in the United States? Where do the problems begin? They begin when people focus on the ways they're different, the differences in color and culture and custom. Turmoil can result from a massive amount of difference. Harmony tends to result from similarity. It's been true throughout history. It's true on a global scale, and it's true on a personal scale. Take any relationship between any two people, and you'll find the first thing that created their bond was something they had in common. They may have different ways of doing the same thing, but it was the commonalities that first brought them together. Think about someone you really like, and notice what makes him appealing. Isn't it the ways in which he's like you, or at least like the way you would like to be? You don't think, wow, this guy thinks the opposite from me on every single issue. What a great guy. You think, what a smart guy. He's able to see the world much the way I do and even add to my perspective. Then think of someone you can't stand. Is he someone just like you? Do you think, God, what a rotten person. He thinks just the way I do. Does this mean there's no way out of a vicious circle of difference creating conflict, creating more difference? Of course not. Because in every case where there's difference, there's sameness too. Do blacks and whites in America have a lot of differences? Sure, if you want to view things that way. But they have much more in common, don't they? We are all men and women, brothers and sisters, with similar fears and aspirations. The way to go from discord to harmony is to go from concentrating on differences to concentrating on similarities. The first step in real communication is learning to translate from your map of the world to someone else's. And what allows us to do that? Rapport skills. If you would win a man to your cause, first convince him that you are his sincere friend. Abraham Lincoln. How do we create rapport? We do it by creating or discovering things in common. In NLP language, we call this process mirroring or matching. There are many ways to create commonality with another person and thus a state of rapport. You can mirror interests, that is, have a similar experience or style of dress or favorite activity. Or you can mirror association, that is, have similar friends or acquaintances. Or you can mirror beliefs. These are common experiences. They're the way we create friendships and relationships. All these experiences have one thing in common: they're communicated through words. The most common way to match others is through the exchange of information about each other through words. However, studies have shown that only 7% of what is communicated between people is transmitted through the words themselves. 38% comes through the tone of voice. I know when I was a kid and my mother raised her voice and said, "Anthony," in a certain tone, that meant much more than my name alone. 55% of communication, the largest part, is a result of physiology or body language. The facial expressions, the gestures, the quality and type of movements of the person delivering a communication provides us with much more about what they're saying than the words do by themselves. This explains why a guy like Don Rickles can get up and attack you and say terrible things and make you laugh. Or how an Eddie Murphy can use 4-letter words and make you laugh. Because it's not the words, it's the delivery, his tonality and physiology that makes you laugh. So if we are just trying to create rapport merely by the content of our conversation, we are missing out on the largest ways we could be communicating commonality to the brain of another person. One of the best ways to achieve rapport is through mirroring or creating a common physiology with that person. That's what the great hypnotherapist Dr. Milton Erickson did. He learned to mirror the breathing patterns, posture, tonality, and gestures of other people. And by doing that, he achieved a totally binding rapport in a matter of minutes. People who did not know him suddenly trusted him without question. So if you can develop rapport with just words, think of the incredible power of rapport you can develop with words and physiology linked together. While the words are working on a person's conscious mind, the physiology is working on the unconscious. That's where the brain is thinking, "Hey, this person's like me. He must be okay." And once that happens, there's a tremendous attraction, a tremendous bond. And because it's unconscious, it's even more effective. You're not aware of anything but the bond that's been formed. So how do you mirror another person's physiology? What kinds of physical traits can you mirror? Start with his voice. Mirror his tonality and phrasing, his pitch, how fast he talks, what sort of pauses he makes, his volume. Mirror favorite words or phrases. How about posture and breathing patterns, or eye contact, body language, facial expressions, hand gestures, or other distinctive movements? Any aspect of physiology, from the way a person plants his feet to the way he tilts his head, is something you can mirror. Now, this may sound absurd at first, but if you could mirror everything about another person, do you know what happens? People feel as though they've found their soulmate, someone who totally understands, who can read their deepest thoughts, who is just like them. But you don't have to mirror everything about a person to create a state of rapport. If you just start with the tone of voice or a similar facial expression, you can learn to build incredible rapport with anyone. For the next several days, you should practice mirroring people you are with. Mirror their gestures and posture. Mirror the rate and location of their breathing. Mirror the tone, tempo, and volume of their voice. Do they feel closer to you, and do you feel closer to them? Remember the mirroring experiment in the chapter on physiology. When a person mirrors someone else's physiology, he's able to experience not only the same state, but also the same sort of internal experiences and even the same thoughts. Now, what if you could do that in your daily life? What if you became such a skillful mirrorer that you could know what someone else was thinking? What sort of rapport would you have then, and what could you do with it? It's an awesome thing to contemplate, but professional communicators do it all the time. Mirroring is a skill like any other. It takes practice to develop. However, you can use it right now and get results. When you break it down, there are 2 keys to mirroring: keen observation and personal flexibility. Here's an experiment to do when you're with someone else. Pick one person to be the mirrorer and the other to be the leader. Have the leader run through as many physical changes as possible in a minute or 2. Change facial expressions, posture, and breathing. Change big things, like the way you hold your arms, and change small ones, like the tension in your neck. This is a great exercise to do with your children. They'll love it. When you're through, compare notes. See how well you did at mirroring the other person. Then change positions. You'll probably find you missed at least as many as you hit. Anyone can become an expert mirrorer, but you need to begin with the recognition that people use their bodies in hundreds of ways, and the more aware you are of these positions, the more successful you'll be. Even though there are unlimited possibilities, people in a sitting position, for example, usually make a limited number of movements. After some practice, you won't even have to think consciously about doing it. You'll just automatically mirror the postures and physiologies of the people around you. There are infinite subtleties to effective mirroring, but the foundation is something we touched on in the chapter on eliciting strategy, the 3 basic representational systems. Remember, everyone uses all 3 representational systems. But most of us have strong preferences, representational systems that we lean on time and time again. We are often primarily visual, or auditory, or kinesthetic. Once you've figured out a person's primary representational system, you've radically simplified the job of developing rapport with him. To effectively communicate, we must realize that we are all different in the way we perceive the world and use this understanding as a guide to our communication with others. Anthony Robbins: if behavior and physiology were made of a random set of factors, you would have to painstakingly pick up every cue and then put them all together. But representational systems are like the keys to a secret code. Knowing one fact gives you a clue to a dozen more. As we saw in Chapter 8, there is a whole constellation of behaviors that go along with being primarily visual. There are verbal cues, phrases like, "This is how it looks to me," or "I just can't picture myself doing that." Speech is usually fast, and breathing is high in the chest. The vocal tone is high-pitched, nasal, and or often strained. There's usually muscle tension, particularly in the shoulders and abdomen. Visually oriented people tend to point a lot. They often have hunched shoulders and an extended neck. Auditory people use phrases like, "It sounds good to me," and "That doesn't ring a bell." Speech is more modulated, the tempo is balanced, and the voice tends to have a clear, resonant tonality. Breathing tends to be even and deep, coming from the diaphragm or the whole chest. There tends to be balanced muscle tension. When people fold their hands or arms, it usually indicates auditory accessing. There's a tendency for shoulders to slouch somewhat and for the head to tilt slightly to one side. Kinesthetic people use phrases like, "It doesn't feel right," or "I'm just not in touch with things." They speak in a slow tempo. Many times they take long pauses between words and have a low, deep tonality. A lot of body movement tends to indicate tactile or external kinesthetic accessing. Muscle relaxation indicates internal, visceral kinesthetic accessing. A position characterized by upturned palms with arms bent and relaxed is kinesthetic. Posture tends to be solid, with the head sitting squarely on the shoulders. There are other cues, and things vary somewhat from person to person, so careful observation is always needed. Each person is unique, but when you know someone's main representational system, you've taken a huge step toward learning how to enter his world. All you have to do is match it. Consider someone who is primarily in an auditory state. If you are trying to persuade him to do something by asking him to picture how it will look, and you talk very, very rapidly, you probably won't get through to him. He needs to hear what you have to say, needs to listen to your proposal and notice if it clicks for himself. In fact, he may not even hear you, simply because your tone of voice may turn him off from the very start. Another person may be in a primarily visual state, and you approach him kinesthetically, talking very slowly about how you feel about something. He will probably become irritated at your slow pace and ask you to please get to the point. To illustrate these differences, I like to give the example of a residential neighborhood I know. One house is located on a quiet, peaceful street. Almost any time of day you can walk out and hear the birds singing. It has a storybook interior that speaks so eloquently, it's hard not to ask yourself how anyone could pass it by. Around twilight, you wander out to the garden just to listen to the birds, the breeze rustling through the branches, and the sound of the wind chimes on the front porch. Another house is amazingly picturesque. You get excited just looking at it. It's visually stunning, from the long wide porch out front to the beautifully detailed wainscoting on the peach-colored walls. There are windows everywhere, so it has beautiful light at almost any time of the day. There's so much to look at, from its winding stairways to its elegant carved oak doors. You could spend a day just exploring every nook and cranny, finding out what new things there are to see. The third house is harder to describe. You have to go and experience it yourself. You just have to feel it. Its construction is solid and reassuring. Its rooms have a distinctive warmth. In a totally undefinable way, it touches something very fundamental in you. It's almost nurturing. You feel like sitting in a corner and soaking up whatever vapors are making you feel so serene. In all three cases, I'm talking about the same house. The first is from an auditory, the second from a visual, and the third from a kinesthetic point of view. If you were showing the house to a group of people, to fully bring alive its richness, you would tap into all three modes. Each person's main representational system will determine which of the three descriptions sounds most enticing. But remember, people use all three. The most elegant way to communicate is to tap them all, while focusing on the system the other person uses most. Begin to make a list of visual, auditory, and kinesthetic words. For the next several days, listen to the people you are talking with and determine what kind of words they use most. Then speak to them using the same kind of words. What happens? Then speak for a while using a different representational system. What happens this time? Let me give you an example of just how potent effective mirroring can be. I was in New York recently, and I wanted to relax, so I went to Central Park. I walked over and sat on a bench to watch what was going on. Pretty soon, I noticed this guy sitting across from me. And I just began to mirror him. Once you get in the habit, it's tough to stop. I mirrored him exactly. I'm sitting the way he is, breathing the way he is, doing the same thing with my feet. He starts throwing breadcrumbs to the birds. I start throwing breadcrumbs to the birds. He's swaying his head a little. I start swaying my head a little. Then he glances up, and I glance up. He looks at me, and I look at him. Before too long he gets up and walks over to me. No surprise. I'm totally attracted to him because he thinks I'm just like him. We start talking, and I'm mirroring his tone of voice and his phraseology exactly. After a few moments he says, "It's obvious you're a very intelligent man." Why does he believe that? Because he feels I'm just like him. Before too long he's telling me he feels he knows me better than people he's known for 25 years. And not long after that, he offers me a job. I know that some people I talk to about mirroring get all uptight. And say that it's unnatural, it's manipulative. But the idea that it's unnatural is absurd. Anytime you are in rapport with someone, it's natural for you to begin mirroring him in physiology, tonality, and so on. Whenever I teach seminars, usually someone present is upset about mirroring. I simply point out that if he will look over at the person next to him, he will notice that they are sitting just the same way. They both have their legs crossed, their heads are tilted at the same angle, and so forth. Invariably, they are mirroring each other because they have developed rapport over the course of several days. I then ask the one how he feels about the other, and he will say, "Great," or "Close." Then I have the other person change his physiology and sit in a completely different posture. When I ask the first person how he feels about the other person now, the answers I receive are, "Not as close," or "Distant," or "I'm not sure anymore." So mirroring is a natural process of rapport. You already do it unconsciously. In this chapter, we're learning what we do, the recipes for rapport, so that we can create that result anytime we wish, with anyone, even a stranger. As for mirroring being manipulative, tell me which requires more conscious effort, just to speak at your normal pace and tone or truly to find out how another person communicates best and to enter his world. And remember that while you're mirroring another person, you truly experience how he feels. If your intent were to manipulate someone else, once you begin to mirror, you in fact begin to feel more like him, so the question becomes, are you willing to manipulate yourself? You're not giving up your identity when you mirror another person. You are not exclusively a visual, auditory, or kinesthetic person. We should all strive to be flexible. Mirroring simply creates a commonality of physiology that underscores our shared humanity. When I'm mirroring, I can get the benefits of another person's feelings and experiences and thoughts. That's a powerful, beautiful, and empowering lesson to experience about how to share the world with other human beings. Massive cultural success results from rapport with the masses. The most effective leaders are strong in all three representational systems. We tend to trust people who appeal to us on all three levels and who give off a sense of congruity. All the parts of their personality convey the same thing. Think of the past presidential election. Do you think Ronald Reagan, for his age, is an attractive man visually? Does he have an attractive tone of voice and manner of speaking? Can he move you emotionally with feelings of patriotism and possibility? Most people, even those who disagree with his policies, would give a resounding yes to all three questions. No wonder they call him the great communicator. Now think of Walter Mondale. Is he an attractive man visually? When I ask this question in seminars, I'm lucky if I get a 20% yes response. Does he have an attractive tone of voice and manner of speaking? I get an even smaller number of people who believe he does. Even those who agree with everything Mondale says seldom answer yes to this question. Can he move you emotionally with feelings of patriotism and possibility? I usually get a laugh at this point. That was one of his biggest failings. So was it any surprise that Reagan won in a landslide? Think of what happened to Gary Hart. He was fairly attractive on all three levels. Mondale had more money and had been in the White House, so he seemed the logical choice. Yet Hart was in the running, but only for a short time. What happened? For one thing, Hart was incongruent. When people asked him why he had changed his name, he said it wasn't important, but his body language and tone of voice said otherwise. He could have stood in front of the press and said, "Yes, I changed my name. But I did it so that you wouldn't judge me by my name, but rather by the quality of the job that I do." Instead, he was wishy-washy. Then he had to be pressed to discuss his new ideas, and when he did, many people felt there was no substance to them. They were just fluff. What about GeraldineFerraro? Do you think she's an attractive woman visually? About 60% of the people I interviewed thought so. Do you feel she has an attractive tone of voice? Here is where Ferraro loses, and loses big. Between 80 and 90% of the audience I interviewed said that her voice was not only unattractive but irritating. The only exceptions were people from New York City. And only 10% said she could move them emotionally. Can you imagine how difficult it would be for you to be popular, even if you have the greatest ideas in the world, if people are irritated every time you open your mouth? Being a woman and being on the same ticket with Mondale didn't help Ms. Ferraro in some people's eyes. Yet they may not have been the major reasons she didn't get support. Her tone of voice, her inability to move people emotionally, and, finally, her incongruency cost her. Many issues arose where it appeared she was delivering mixed messages about abortion, nuclear first strike, her husband's finances, and more. The personal communication skills of the Democratic candidates alone made defeat almost inevitable. Think now of a major cultural success like Bruce Springsteen. His concerts are packed, and he offers everything for the eyes and ears. Visually attractive, he talks to his audiences in a voice deep with feeling, and he develops tremendous rapport. He appears totally congruent. Think of a president from modern history who stands out in your mind as being powerful, charismatic, able to make a difference. Did you think of John F. Kennedy? 95% of the people I polled do. Why? Well, there are many reasons, but let's check a few. Did you feel that Kennedy was an attractive man visually? You bet. I rarely find someone who didn't think he was. How about from an auditory point of view? 90% of the people I polled agreed he was attractive in this way, too. Could he move you emotionally with statements like, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country"? He was a master of using communication to affect people. Was he congruent? Khrushchev must have thought so. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a test of congruency between Kennedy and Khrushchev. They were both staring at each other eye to eye, and as one writer put it, Khrushchev blinked. Studies of successful people have shown over and over again that they have a great talent for creating rapport. Those who are flexible and attractive in all three modes can affect large numbers of people, whether as a teacher, a businessman, or a world leader. But you don't need any sort of natural gift to do it. If you can see and hear and feel, you can create rapport with anyone just by doing what he does. You're looking for the things you can mirror as unobtrusively and as naturally as possible. If you mirror a person who is asthmatic or has a terrible twitch, instead of achieving rapport, you'll lead him to think you're mocking him. By practicing consistently, you enter the world of whomever you're with and speaking in that person's mode. It will soon become second nature. And you will do it automatically without any conscious thought. When you begin to mirror effectively, you'll learn that the process does more than just allow you to achieve rapport and understand the other person. Because of what's known as pacing and leading, you are able to get them to follow you. It doesn't matter how different you are. It doesn't matter how you meet. If you can establish enough rapport with someone, before too long you can change his behavior to begin matching yours. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, my nutrition business began to develop a relationship with a very powerful doctor in Beverly Hills. We got off on the wrong foot. He wanted an immediate decision on a proposal, but I was out of town, and I was the only one who could make the decision. He didn't like having to wait for someone as young as I was 21 at the time, and he was in a pretty antagonistic state when I finally met him. I found him sitting in his office in a very rigid position, his muscles tensed. I sat in the chair opposite him in exactly the same posture and began to mirror the rhythm of his breathing. He spoke rapidly, so I spoke rapidly. He had an unusual way of gesturing, waving his right arm in a circle. I picked up the same thing. Despite the bad circumstances of our meeting, we began to get along. Why? Because by matching him, I'd established rapport. Before too long, I began to see if I could lead him. First, I slowed down the pace of my speech. He slowed down, too. Then I sat back in my chair. He did the same thing. At the beginning, I was matching and mirroring him. But as our rapport developed, I was able to lead him to match and mirror me. Then he asked me out to lunch, and we ended up having a really friendly meal together, as if we were the best of buddies. Now this was a guy who hated my guts when I walked in the door. So you don't need to have ideal circumstances to mirror well. You just need the skill to adapt your behavior to that of someone else. What I was doing with this man was pacing and leading. Pacing is just graceful mirroring, moving the way a person moves, changing gestures as he changes gestures. Once you attain great skill in mirroring someone else, you can change your physiology and behavior almost instinctively as the other person changes. Rapport is not static, it's not something that remains stable once achieved. It's a dynamic, fluid, flexible process. Just as the key to establishing a truly resonant, lasting relationship is the ability to change and adjust to what someone else is going through, the key to pacing is an ability to elegantly and accurately change gears when someone else does. Leading follows directly from pacing. As you establish rapport with someone, you create a link that can almost be felt. Leading comes just as naturally as pacing. You reach a point where you start to initiate change rather than just mirroring the other person, a point where you have developed so much rapport that when you change, the other person will unconsciously follow you. You've probably experienced being with friends late at night when you're not tired at all, but you're in such deep rapport that when they yawn, you yawn too. The best salesmen do exactly the same thing. They enter another person's world, achieve rapport, and then use that rapport to lead. An obvious question comes up when we talk about rapport this way: what if someone's mad? Do you mirror his madness or his anger? Well, that's certainly one choice. However, in the next chapter we are going to talk about how to break someone's pattern, whether it be one of anger or frustration, and how to do it quickly. It might be best to break someone's pattern rather than to mirror that anger. Sometimes, by mirroring someone's anger, you can enter his world so strongly that when you begin to relax, he begins to relax also. Remember, rapport doesn't just mean you're smiling. Rapport means responsiveness. Street people, for instance, sometimes find that mirroring the anger right back is absolutely essential. Occasionally, you may need to be just as intense in your communication to a person, since his challenge to you is one of the many ways respect is developed in this part of our culture. Here's another experiment. Engage someone in conversation. Mirror him in posture, voice, and breathing. After a while, gradually change your posture or tone of voice. Does the other person follow you after a few minutes? If he does not, simply go back and pace again. Then try a different lead and make the change less radical. If, when you attempt to lead someone, he does not follow, it simply means you do not have enough rapport yet. Develop more rapport and try again. I bid him look into the lives of men as though into a mirror, and from others to take an example for himself. Terence Watts. The key to establishing rapport. Flexibility. Remember, the biggest barrier to rapport is thinking that other people have the same map you do, that because you see the world one way, they do too. Excellent communicators rarely make this mistake. They know they have to change their language, their tonality, their breathing patterns, their gestures, until they discover an approach that is successful in achieving their outcome. If you fail to communicate with someone, it's tempting to assume that he is a hopeless fool who refuses to listen to reason. But that virtually guarantees you'll never get through. It's better to change your words and behaviors until they match his model of the world. One essential tenet of NLP is that the meaning of your communication is the response you elicit. The responsibility in communication rests upon you. If you try to persuade someone to do one thing, and he does the other, the fault was in your communication. You didn't find a way to get your message through. This is absolutely crucial in anything you do. Let's look at teaching. The greatest tragedy in education is that most teachers know their subjects, but they don't know their students. They don't know how their students process information, they don't know their students' representational systems, they don't know how their students' minds work. The best teachers instinctively know how to pace and lead. They're able to establish rapport, so their message gets through. But there's no reason why all teachers can't learn the same thing. By learning to pace their students, by learning to present information in the forms their students can effectively process, they can revolutionize the educational world. Some teachers think that since they know their subjects, any failure in communication rests with the students who can't learn. But response, not content, is the meaning of communication. You can know everything in the world about the Holy Roman Empire, but if you can't establish rapport, if you can't translate that information from your map to someone else's, your knowledge is meaningless. That's why the best teachers are the ones who establish rapport. There's a story about a classroom in which all the kids, as a prank, arranged to drop their books at exactly 9 a.m. so as to throw the teacher off. Without missing a beat, she put down her chalk, picked up a book, and dropped it, too. "Sorry I'm late," she said. After that, she had the kids eating out of her hand. The founders of NLP gave a fascinating example of just how education should work. There was a young engineering student whose primary representational system was kinesthetic. At first he had terrible problems learning to read electrical schematics. He found the subject difficult and boring. Basically, he was having trouble making sense of concepts that were being presented visually. Then one day he began to imagine what it would feel like to be an electron floating through the circuit he saw diagrammed in front of him. He imagined his various reactions and changes in behavior as he came in contact with the components in the circuit, symbolized by characters on the schematic. Almost immediately, the diagrams began to make more sense to him. He even began to enjoy them. Each schematic presented him with a new odyssey. It was so enjoyable that he ended up becoming an engineer. He succeeded because he was able to learn through his favored representational system. Nearly all the kids who wash out of our educational systems are capable of learning. We just never learned how to teach them. We never established rapport with them and never matched their learning strategies. I've been emphasizing teaching because, in the end, it's something we all do, whether at home with our kids or at work with our employees or peers. What works in a classroom works in a boardroom or a living room as well. There's a final wonderful thing about the magic of rapport. It's the most accessible skill in the world. You don't need textbooks, and you don't need courses. You don't need to travel to study at the feet of a master, and you don't need to earn a degree. The only tools you need are your eyes, your ears, your senses of touch, taste, and smell. You can begin cultivating rapport right now. We are always communicating and interacting. Rapport is simply doing both in the most effective ways possible. You can study rapport when you're waiting for a plane by mirroring the people in line with you. You can use rapport at the grocery store. You can use it at your job and at home. If, when you go in for a job interview, you match and mirror the interviewer, he'll like you immediately. Use rapport in your business to create an immediate connection with clients. If you want to become a master communicator, all you need to do is learn how to enter other people's worlds. You already have everything you need to do it now. There's another way to establish rapport, sets of distinctions that help determine the choices people make. They're called ...